Sales Docket with our good friend, Mr. Mark Wentworth. Thank you so much for joining us as I'm frozen. Tim Garner, Steve Rapp, we are here at the Sales Docket. Mark Wentworth, really appreciate your time this morning. As you've seen in our past Sales Docket, we love a good origin story, right? Let's kick it off, Mark. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into the business? What's been impactful as you go through your career? Kind of love to hear your story.
Yeah, no, great. Well, first of all, good to see you guys. Steve, always a pleasure, and Tim, great to meet you. I'm surprised we haven't met
Absolutely.
as long as we've both been in the industry together. So I've been in the legal tech space 20 plus years is kind of my go-to, but it's closer to 25. I have been very fortunate in that I've been with a lot of the leading software and services companies in this space. And it's been a combination. Earlier days were individual contributor. I moved into management and, I'm work with a lot of early stage companies. And so, again, we talk about, I think, roles and titles and so forth. I mean, always be selling, I think, is the adage, right? And so whatever my title is, I'm always selling, whether I'm managing a team or driving revenue myself. So, but yeah, as Steve, as you know, two of those companies we worked at together. So,
We did.
so good
Sorry to
stories
hear
with
that.
both of
But
those.
Mark, how'd you get?
Sorry to hear that.
No, sorry, we were crushing it. What are you talking
I
about?
was gonna,
Farewell and
well, he
brain
had to
space.
work with.
Good,
I had to
good
work with
days.
Rap myself, so I'm sorry that you had to work with him at two places. I only had to deal with it once.
Well, for what it's worth, I'd work with them again, but that's a whole other story. But so what was the question, Ralph?
How did you end up in? I mean, how did you end up in actually the legal space? Like, what was? How did you find out about it? Where'd you start? What drew you
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the industry?
Good question. So I was finishing my MBA and I'd been in sales. I worked my way through sales through college, and I had student loans to pay, and I had a recruiter that had a tie-in to Icon Office Solutions, and so that's how I started in the space. They were known for their B2B sales training, and so I had been more kind of B2C previous while I was in college. And so, I wanted the sales training. And so I just kind of happened to, I think, find my way into the industry. And I think I've always been fascinated by technology and, the better, cheaper, faster mantra, right? And so I think that's how I've always tried to kind of push myself in finding innovative companies to work for. And to drive growth and revenue.
Yeah, we're all we're all ex
Yeah,
iconers in
that's a
that, right?
trifecta. That's a trifecta. I know one name.
That's right. Yeah. I was not Knight Rider though. I was pre-acquisition, and so I was Icon. I think I started in 2000, but anyway, it's good experience,
So
great experience.
so
Absolutely.
so w- I see the gray, and it's very very coming on you, Mark.
Little too
You do
much,
you
but
do have the sexiest voice in the industry. It's like a jazz club
Oh,
listening to you. I don't know if that what makes you a great salesperson, but people get blown away by that. But I do love that about you. What makes a great salesperson, Mark? I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. If you look, and again, we're all about sales gems, right? So I
right.
think we've talked about this a couple of times of what makes a good salesperson, because I think someone coming into this industry can have the 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 push to drive themselves to be good. But what is that defined? What does that look like?
So I think I look at this in several ways, right? So things that I try to emulate myself, and when I'm managing a team, things that I look for in them, right? And I think that I see this come up on the LinkedIn feed every once in a while. I actually pulled it up to take a look at it. 10 things that require zero talent, right? And those are like the basics, right? So being on time, making an effort, being high energy, being passionate, things like that, right? And I think, at Clearwell, we always had this kind of mantra of like fire in the belly, right? And those were the kind of people that we looked for, right? They had that innate drive and motivation, right? And I think that, you can train on a lot, but you really can't train on that, right? They either have it or they don't.
Mm.
And I think that that's always something that I feel like I have. I arguably would outwork most people, with an exception of you, Rap. And so I think that there's some intangibles, but I think that beyond that, I think that uh, you know, being knowledgeable not only about your business but your client's business, I think is key, right? And so, there's the concept of the trusted advisor, and I think that's where we've all tried to kind of take our careers to. And I think to do that, you not only need to understand your business, and I think this has come up in a couple of your previous podcasts where, you know, um, do the demo, do the demo well, because you learn a lot of things about your technology that you wouldn't know if you didn't know the demo, right? And I think I've always tried to, I'm not a solution engineer and I would never claim to be, but I want to defer as little questions, few questions as possible. And so when I walk into a room, if I'm by myself, I want to make sure that if I'm meeting with a group of IT people, I can have those conversations. And maybe I can't dig as deep as, an SE, but I can get pretty far there, right? And hopefully move the conversation to the next level, which is ultimately the goal. I think secondly, knowing your prospects' business, whether they're an attorney, head of practice support, a chief innovation officer, whatever their title is, I think you've got to understand their business and what their drivers are, right? So what's going to be a win for them? I'm trying to sell them something. They're meeting with me today for a reason. I need to figure that out, right? Which is part of the goal. But secondly, I need to walk in there armed and I need to understand their business so that I can see what their gaps are. What is their technology stack? Where are we going to fit in, right? And making sure that I'm asking the right questions to uncover why he or she's meeting with me today, what he's looking for, what they're looking for, and how we can kind of fit in and move things forward.
Yeah, and it was interesting in our last podcast, Twilight, with her financial printing background, was talking about, 10Ks and the way she did her research. So if you're walking into a corporation or a law firm, what research are you doing? I thought that was a really interesting question, just because being prepared and understanding their pain is critical, right? It's all part of the whole spin selling that we were all brought up, is understand their situation, what's their pain, needs, payoff, and implication, and all that stuff. Great. What do you do, Mark? What do you do? Like, you're meeting with a general counsel at a corporation. How do you figure out what the pain is on the litigation side?
Yeah, so I think you can start with the basics, right? So LinkedIn profile, right? And so help me understand kind of where they have been. Is there any companies that they've worked at where I've done work with, or I know people, or what have you? Articles that they may have published. A lot of times, general counsels, may put out information on, key things that are important to them. And so you can pick up on those things and I've found a lot of those articles and come in and reference those in meetings with them. Hey, I read an article that you put out, last year about your focus on risk reduction, right? And here's how we can kind of assist you with that, right? And so I think that those are some things that I think, starting with LinkedIn, looking at anything that they have written, articles that they have written, looking at background on the company and what's driving them, right? Have they had a couple of tough quarters? That might give you some insight into, what the legal department is looking to do, right? Are they cutting back, or do they have budget going into next year, right? So anyway,
Yeah.
just
So I've asked two. It's Timmy's turn.
Yeah,
Good answer, Mark.
it's really hard for me to get a question in when Rap starts off. He just goes down this rabbit hole. But so along the lines of what you were talking about, which I really like about how you prepare and things, and this podcast, the Sales Docket, is really focused on sharing these gems with the younger generation, right? So a lot of times in our experiences, we've been down the road where we've been in front of a client. And for the younger generation, you got to run into those situations. So we all understand critical thinking. So give me an example, or when a deal stalls for you, right? How do you diagnose the real barriers, priority, budget, authority or trust, and adjust your approach? Because as you said, you go in and you do this research, but sometimes you get in and the deal may stall. So how do you go about adjusting your approach?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this goes into sales methodologies, which you're probably going to ask anyway. But if you're using like, I'll just kind of say the first sales methodology that resonated with me was Miller Hyman, right? And so I kind of look at things from that perspective, especially if it's a committee sale, right? Do I have the right group involved? Do I understand who the players are, right? If a deal stalls, have I asked the right questions, right? I mean, if it's a corporation, does it tie into budget, right? Have I identified the competitive landscape and you know is the sales rep at XYZ company the brother-in-law of the general counsel? I don't know, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that there are certain things that are sales kind of core fundamentals that I think you've got to do, especially in a complex sale where there's a lot of moving parts, right? And I think Miller Hyman is a good way to kind of look at things. I'll kind of take my sales methodologies a little further in that, because I think that there are others that, like Challenger Sale, where going back
Yep.
to being knowledgeable enough about your prospect's business to make recommendations and give them a better way of kind of seeing how they can create efficiency or reduce cost or whatever the metric is. So hopefully
It's it's a good
Yeah,
answers.
no,
point.
that's
Can I jump in on that? So, I mean, I remember, we had Bud Light back at the Clearwell days, right? Budget. So, do you have, is there a piece of paper? Do you do it through Salesforce? Is there a checklist? Like, do you have some methodology that you use today to keep, like, where you're kind of connecting the dots on this entire process, right? From a committee standpoint, what do you use for that?
So there was a company, the one company that I worked for outside of this space over the last 25 years was a Sequoia-funded company, a unicorn. And
Mm,
the VP of sales had come from a company where they had brought in force management, which was a command of the message, right? You kind of break down your value propositions and what the messaging was and so forth. But that philosophy introduced MEDIC to me. And
mm,
so MEDIC or MEDPIC, depending on if you take it to the next level. But I mean, that's a methodology that you can use as a rep and you can also use as a manager when you're doing deal reviews, right?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
what are the metrics that you're using, or what or the metrics that you've identified to see if we're a good fit here and that we're going to drive value within this organization, right? It's a great philosophy, and I think if you're all on the same page and using that, then I think that it just makes things a lot easier, right? The reps know
Yeah,
what they need to know, and the managers need to know what they need to know. So.
yeah, I love that. And sorry, Tim, I don't know if you had a question. I did have one more.
no,
So, Mark, you're,
apologies. My father-in-law had a heart attack this morning, so
oh
I
my
just got
God.
a text. Yeah, so he's good. So I don't know how this messes up the podcast. Sorry, I
Well,
just
dude,
got the
if you
text.
need to jump,
No, I got. She's letting me know. She was just letting me know. So go ahead,
yeah.
Rap. I'm sitting there. Go ahead.
No, no, no. That I love it. So, Mark, I mean, I think one of the things that I think you mentioned this earlier is kind of this uncanny ability of you to find companies that are changing the way things do. Stream You, I think, is a company that is early in its early stages, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Coming onto the marketplace. You guys you have to educate, right? I mean, there's a lot of times back in Clearwell days, there was an education, right? When you have a new technology, there's education in the marketplace, and it's this curve, right? I mean, it takes time to get to the stage where whatever new things you're bringing into the marketplace gets an actual name of what it is, right? So early case assessment, right? Whatever the word is. Look, and I think there's risk going to new companies, right? So I think one of the things you mentioned earlier was that you went to Icon because they had a really good sales program. There was not a lot of risk with that, right? If I'm a new salesperson, I want a foundational level of understanding about sales, and then I can take risk, right? Is that
Right.
kind of the way you've seen your journey? And what do you look for? I mean, if I'm coming into this space, especially with all the changes on technology, what's the vision board? What are you, as a young salesperson, what do you look for? Like if I was looking for that next opportunity, or as technology's changing and things are becoming agentic, and like it's changing so quickly these days for this next generation, what are the factors? What do you look for?
Yeah, I think for me, I really like early stage companies. I like building, right? I like
Mm,
innovative tech, right? And I think again, I've been very fortunate to some of it's just been dumb luck, right? I mean, Clearwell, was just how I ended up there, just like you, right, at the right time.
right.
I think was just a funny coincidence or whatever you want to call it. But I think that was it Branson that said, if you find a rocket ship, don't worry about your seat, just jump on, right, and figure
Mhm.
out where your seat is later, or whatever, right? That's probably not the exact quote, but pretty
But
close,
I like it.
pretty
It
close.
probably
But
is Branson.
I think it is. Yeah. And so, I think that I've always tried to look for innovative companies that are, I think, pushing the envelope, right? And they've identified a gap within the industry, and they developed tech to kind of solve those problems. And Streamview has done that, and that's what brought me over here. But it's the same thing that led me to Clearwell, to Recommind, to Brainspace, right? To TextIQ and some others, right? And I think that um, for me, it's disruptive tech. I think it's talented team. I think that there's a lot of advantages to being private equity funded, in that, you're going to pour gas on the fire and hire a lot of great talent, and you've got endless kind of abilities and dollars to throw at any challenge, right? I think there's also some benefits to being privately held and having a more moderate growth, right? And so, I think it's finding that balance, right? And so whether it's you're with a company that's well funded, private equity funded, or you're with a company that's more privately funded, making sure you've got those fundamentals so that your position, your opportunity is really there to do what you want to do with it, right?
Mm,
You want to hit those growth numbers that are important to you. Those growth numbers are realistic, first of all. Early stage companies, a lot of times you're like, yeah, I think we can hit 10 million next year, right? When maybe you've done two this year. That's not going to happen, right? So, I mean, it
right.
could, but so just making sure a lot of those things are lining up so that your success is as probable as it can be. So,
Mm.
Got one question because I know we got to wrap up. We're 8 minutes before the half of the hour, but and I know Rap has our final question that we generally ask, but we've all been doing this a while, right? So and it's funny, Steve and I both have one of the same mentors when we went to Icon. So who was your mentor, and what did he do to help you, or her? Him
Right.
or her.
yeah,
And I think that's a really important question, Tim, because I think, Mark, what you mentioned earlier is you look for technology, but you also look for a talented team,
yeah,
right? And part of that talented team is an attachment to potentially a mentor or someone who's much potentially smarter than you that can teach you things, right? I know I've helped you out tremendously through the years.
I've learned nothing from
So,
you,
So
but
this is
that's a
so,
whole
about
nother.
rap. I'm sorry.
you
I'm
don't
sorry.
have to mention me, but please, Mark.
So I've always looked for that as well, right? And
Mm,
so it goes back to the talented team piece, right? And so um, are there folks that are in management or the executive team that have done what you're looking to do, and can you learn from them, right? Because if you feel like you know everything you need to know, you're probably in the wrong business, or you probably need to hang it up, right? But I think that there's a lot of mentors that I've had throughout the years that have been really important to me. I mean, going back to Icon, right? My mentor at Icon became a recruiter And he's the one that placed me in Clearwell, right?
Mhm.
We had some great, talented folks at Clearwell. Trevor Eddy, who is our VP, I still stay in touch with and learn things from him and others, right? And so I think if you can find that at various companies, not only find people that are talented, but that are willing to kind of pass along their knowledge, right? They want to bring up the next generation. They want to improve your skill set. I mean, that's a sign of a good manager, right? Not only hiring and finding the right team, but coaching them and making sure that they're not only achieving their goals, but wherever they move on after this, they're going to be successful, right?
Yeah, it's a great answer. And Tim's
Yeah.
right. We're gonna slowly wrap this up. So here's the big question. This is always our last question we ask. Tim, do you want? I feel like I've been talking a lot today, just to
I
let you know,
I
buddy.
I, I already know
You,
what it is, so
you
but go ahead,
first
go
of
ahead.
all, Rap, you cannot help yourself. Like the whole point about you telling him how you helped him a lot. It's like enough of let's not talk more about me. Let's talk more about me, right? That's Rap in a nutshell. But yeah, no,
Wow.
no. Well, I love you, buddy. I love you.
I know. I know.
But you brought up some interesting things, Mark, about having a mentor, and I think for all, and this is to go to the younger group that's listening to the sales docket, you have to be open to that advice. You have to be open to hearing and taking advice from other people, and I think that's what really kind of makes a strong salesperson. And you bring that up, that you've got these people in your life that you talk to still today 25 years into the industry. So to the younger group out there listening to Mark, just make sure you're open to receiving that information from everybody, because if you feel as though you know everything, you've missed a lot. So I love that point that you bring up. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and I think a mentor could be a colleague too, right? And so
Mhm.
I know I'm going to regret saying this, but I have learned things from Rap, and hopefully he's learned some things from me,
I have
right? So,
no
so,
doubt.
but I think that surrounding yourself with good people is always important, and you can always learn things, I think, from colleagues and or managers and executives. So.
Absolutely. Thanks. Go ahead, Rapper.
All right. So if you look at all your past experiences, right, in the last 25 years plus whatever, you've been working for a long time, what single event
What are you
changed?
saying?
It's just it's
Gray
there.
hair.
What single event changed the trajectory of your career? Really, what caused the pivot, and what lessons would you share to the next generation? Because Tim and I have had moments that, I think Clearwell was a pivot moment for me, right? Just going from services to software, that was clearly a pivotal moment for me. Can you share?
So that's exactly what my pivot moment was Clearwell for me, right? And so
Yeah.
I'd been at Icon, I'd been at a small kind of tech company, Syngens, had been at Applied Discovery, right? And I think that starting at Clearwell gave me really solid training in not only e-discovery software, but enterprise software. And it took my corporate selling to a whole nother level, right? I mean, we were working with corporations, AmLaw law firms, and service providers and advisories. And I think that that was kind of the pivot for me that really helped me understand how much I love tech. And I think that, there was if you looked at all the executives within Clearwell, they had a kind of a philosophy, right? And so they aligned themselves with disruptive companies that were funded by primarily Sequoia, right?
Yeah.
And so there was an end goal there, right? And so many of them had been at previous companies that had had successful exits. And so aside from that piece, I think just really developing my enterprise software skill set at Clearwell really, I think, helped me focus my career in that direction, basically.
I love that. And so I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into that, right? Just because I really want something juicy. So when you say developing enterprise sales, what part of that got fine-tuned? What was the focus? What did Trevor Eddies or Andy Burns or whoever it was drill into you when it came down to selling into the enterprise? I don't know if there's
So
one specific thing, but is there one thing that's kind of stands out? Like you leave it as a sales gem, like I'm selling into
so
corporation. Here's the thing that has to be done.
So at Icon and even at Applied Discovery, we sold to corporate, right? But it was more
Right.
services, and it was, litigation budget, right? And so it was per matter, and so forth. But I think Clearwell gave me the first insight into working with corporate procurement, working with budget cycles, and asking the right questions as far as kind of how they were going to budget the sale, right? Was it CapEx budget? What are we looking at? Are we looking at next year? Is it operating budget? Do they need something a little sooner, right? And Clearwell, we did this on certain occasions, right? We might do a starter license with litigation budget. They need it in next month because they've got a matter that's heating up, and they want to leverage that to buy Clearwell, for in-house use, right? And so I think it was kind of that aspect. It was procurement, it was budget cycles, it was going back to Miller Hyman, it was kind of understanding your buyer personas and who the committee is going to be, right? I think it was all of those things and then some.
Okay, that's awesome, Mark. Well, the time has come.
Yes.
So one of the things we ask you to do, and you don't have to name them now, but we do ask kind of if you wanted to hear the salesperson of your choice, like someone that you've worked with in the space that you think would be a great candidate, we would love to hear that. And it's been an absolute pleasure, Mark.
Yeah, Mark,
Always a pleasure. Yeah.
This was great, man. It's nice to finally meet you. And even though we've been in the same spaces for quite a while, and it was fun, man. Very informative. Appreciate it very much.
Well, hopefully, Tim, it's great to meet you too. And hopefully any comments that Rap may have given you about me or hopefully, weren't too negative. But I think that I think there's a lot of really talented salespeople in this industry. And I think that there's great services people, there's great software people, there's combinations of both, right?
Yeah.
I think in previous episodes you touched on a couple that I think are extremely talented. Mike Sarlo, Chris Taylor, great salespeople. I think and managers as well, right? And innovators. I think that there's a short group too that I would kind of add to that list, and so. I think Kanan Himmelbaum is I've always been really impressed with.
Yeah.
John Del Piero is very talented, and Doug Kaminsky, who we worked with at Clearwell. I would include each of those, and then I'll add one more. So I think you need a guest lecture or a guest commentator to interview you, Rap, because I think you need to be on that list as well. And I think someone needs to interview you, get your feedback.
Appreciate that. I try to put in my gems as we talk, but I do appreciate that, Marky. Really. Well, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. I'll probably see you at Legal Week coming up. So thank you so much.
Sounds good.
Thanks
guys. All right.
Take care, man.
Bye, everyone.
All right,
You too.
bye.
Bye, everyone.